That's why this year, this is our moment. This is the most important time for our industry to be successful and keep these people at home.
Welcome to the Lion's Den, hosted by Lance Bachmann.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Den today. We have a special guest, Marcus Primavera. He's the director at CareGivers America, which was just sold a few months ago. And Marcus is here to talk to you about the growth, different strategies, how digital marketing has helped, M&A, merger and acquisitions. They bought another company about 2 years ago, a local Philadelphia company, SarahCare, owned by Arson. Marcus, congrats on all your success in helping this company grow. I know your boss loves you. I know you've been there for a long time. I know you're a big piece of it. Thank you to the Den, and thank you for coming on, man. I'm pumped up to have you.
Yeah. No, and can I just say, speaking of my boss, she just gave birth to her second child yesterday. So,
Congratulations.
Congrats, Mia. Baby Nicholas is doing well, and mother and baby are both very healthy.
So, Marcus, why don't you tell the viewers who you are,
Sure,
what you do, and how you help this company grow?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the Director of Business Development for CareGivers America, which is the Pennsylvania arm of Simplora's home care suite of companies. My job, I think a lot of directors of business development who may be watching this probably would agree with me. That title, I'm a little bit of the Swiss Army knife of the company. So, obviously I'm here with you doing some PR stuff. I handle all of our marketing strategy. I do a lot of our data analytics. I'm now involved in our recruitment efforts. I'm working with our Director of Recruitment, Samantha, who's awesome. I'm also in charge of our relations with our referral partners, in particular the three big insurance companies who took over the HCBS industry about 3 years ago. It started. And just day-to-day operations, I'm the type of director, I'll be up at 1 a.m. Responding to a Facebook post, personally. So a little bit of everything, really.
So I got to know you. You've been a client here, full transparency, for probably about 18 months now, a little less?
It sounds about right, maybe a hair less, yeah.
18 months,
yeah.
And let's just jump right into it.
Sure.
We're going to talk about why home health care is so important right now.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the pandemic.
Very,
I know you brought some stats here.
Yep.
And we're going to jump into, and I want to make sure it's clear, but corporate didn't believe in digital marketing the way you did. You actually had to sell them on it. They believed in traditional. Can you tell about the impact of when you first came here today? You saw me again. You were like, the best decision I made was hire you prior to the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that real fast?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, I'm all about rewarding success with praise. You guys have done a great job, and walking in here that first day, I immediately knew this was going to be a great partnership, and the future of not only CareGivers America, but hopefully our larger brand. I know some talks with our sister company in Old Metro there, but shout out to Rich. So essentially, in my mind, the shift to digital was not only embracing the future, but it was a more impactful and a more meaningful way to advertise. Traditionally, and anyone any Philadelphians watching this right now know that there was a time when every other billboard was a home care agency billboard. And again, nothing against billboards, nothing against people who create billboards, who own billboard companies. But what is a billboard? It's a big piece of paper. Okay, maybe it's it's kitschy. I hate Steven Singer. It's funny. It's advertising. But in the end, it's just a big piece of paper. It's not doing anything. Right? To compare that to a wonderful infographic that one of your staff created for us, alongside some neat little tips for seniors. That is of course more impactful than a big piece of paper. So to me, it was not only something that just made sense from, okay, I have this money, what am I going to spend it on? But also, we're in healthcare. We're not selling widgets. This is, especially right now, people have questions, and most people are turning to their phones and their computers to find out answers to those questions. So having a robust digital infrastructure like we do now, thanks to you, was just, again, it was a wise decision, I think, and I'm glad that we did it before the pandemic because we had everything kind of set up, and as soon as things with the pandemic became into the lockdown phase, and people were on their phones even more and on their computers, it was easy for us to pivot into that more informational digital presence.
So the pandemic hits.
Yeah.
And when I saw you, we were just chatting, you said, and you take it serious, you said, this is the fight of my lifetime.
Sure.
It comes around once in 100 years.
Yep.
And you said, my wife's a nurse at UPenn on the front line, which we appreciate you working, and I hope you tell your wife that.
Jeez. Yeah.
Can you explain to the viewers why this is, and it's going to sound so, we know it's the fight of our lifetime. But why, in your eyes, is this the fight of a lifetime for home health care? Because most people don't know what home health care is. Can you first explain what home health care is?
Of course, yeah.
And why this is the fight of the lifetime for home health care?
Yeah. That's actually a good starting point because prior to myself coming to this industry, I actually was a bit confused. Even with an MBA in healthcare administration, I didn't really understand the waiver and private pay and all that. So basically, home health care, in a general sense, is that a either skilled or non-skilled home health care aide, a nurse, a therapist, a caregiver, will come to your home and assist you with the activities of daily living. Or if it's a little more advanced, something that a nurse would do, administering medications, and basically just making sure that you can live at home with health, with safety, with oversight, with care, compassion, so you don't have to encounter those alternatives that we're going to talk about.
I was doing a little research. It looks like the government made this program so people weren't going to put into nursing homes.
Correct.
And they said, okay, listen, if you have a loved one that would like to take care of their mother or grandmother, it could be a loved one, it could be a family member, or just somebody from your local neighborhood.
Sure. Yes. Correct.
Without burdening, and it pays pretty well. I mean, it's not a bad pay. And
sure.
Instead of crowding the nursing homes and crowding these, is that an accurate reason why this program came around?
So then getting into the more granular aspects of home care, then there's several different types. So, if you're well off, you can do private pay, which is something we offer. So that's where you just basically write us a check, and then we send you a caregiver, nurse, or therapist. There's VA programs, which we also work with. There's a program called Options or Block. That's for people who maybe just need a little bit, just a few hours a week, maybe 4, maybe 8. I think the average is maybe around 6. Somebody come in, usually non-skilled, help out maybe with some cooking, just checking in, and then there's the big one, which is now called the Community Health Choices Waiver. And again, that's the I'm going to try not to use as many acronyms as I usually do. My wife always tells me that I use way too many, but that's based within the home and community-based services sector of the Office of Long-Term Living. So that's based out of Harrisburg, of course. Each state has their own version of it, of course. And prior to it becoming the Community Health Choices Waiver, it was known of a few different types: aging waiver, independence waiver. Those were all merged into Community Health Choices Waiver when one very big thing happened: managed care took over. So essentially, that's and this has happened, I believe, in almost over half of the states in the United States have moved to this model. So that's where the government still is the payer, saying, you know what, let's bring in some insurance companies to oversee this. It's more efficient. There's going to be more innovation. There's going to be more oversight. So insurance companies then bid in each state. Each state selects the winner on, I guess, various criteria depending. Mostly quality, I would presume.
That backyard handshake.
Yeah. Well, yes. No.
It's a whole other conversation.
No. And the 3 insurance companies currently that won the bids here in Pennsylvania are UPMC for You, which is, of course, part of University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, PA Health and Wellness, which is a division of Centene Corporation, which I believe is a Fortune 50 company, very big, operating in many, many states. facilities. And here locally, most of everybody would know Keystone First, or AmeriHealth Caritas, as it's known more in the center of the state. So with that, that was certainly challenging, especially right after the rebrands of Sarah Care and Helping Hand that we'd mentioned. But it's a great program, and when I used to, not that I ever had to sell the program, not that in any sort of fashion, but the way that I would sort of talk with friends about it is, listen, it is way cheaper to the taxpayer for the person to remain at home. I mean, we're talking maybe anywhere from 10 to 30% cheaper than them going to a nursing home. In America, we do not let our especially older folks die on the street. We don't let them go into squalor in their homes. We have government-funded nursing facilities or long-term care facilities, as we'll talk about. So with that said, those can be, depending on the room type, shared, not shared, depending on the county, could be $90,000 a year, taxpayer dollars. So years ago, they realized that it'd be a lot cheaper for them to stay at home, to pay a home care agency, along with other ancillary services like medical supplies, home modifications even, meal delivery, for them to stay at home. So I always say this, to both sides of the political aisle, it's a win-win, because it's less of a burden on the taxpayer, and on the other side, it's keeping families together and it's keeping communities together. Think about it. And I think I might have said this to you in our last interview, and I apologize, but it's such an interesting stat. DHS, the Department of Human Services, commissioned a study, and they early on they wanted to know would you prefer being at home or in a nursing facility? Okay, come on. 99, literally it was 99.9% said at home.
Of course.
No, everyone wants to be at home. And again, we can talk about long-term care facilities, but in plenty are fine places staffed by wonderful people who've certainly been on the front lines of this in some really, really drastic ways. But the bottom line is people want to be at home.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What is the fight right now? Is the pandemic slowing down? I know you had to change a lot with your processes, procedures.
Right.
I know you have a ton of data. You said this is the fight of our lifetime for you.
Correct. Yes.
Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So again, I promise I won't get too into the weeds. Something that I tend to do a lot because I do love big data. I do think that data-driven decision making is
Absolutely.
usually the right choice in life, in business. It's one of the reasons that I decided to engage you guys. So pandemics of this proportion come around about every 100 years. There was recently a Vox article that actually ranked all the pandemics in human history, at least the ones that we knew about. This one's up there. It's not the bubonic plague or anything, but it's a significant pandemic.
What number did it make?
I believe it was out of 10. I think it was like 8 or 9. Yeah. So again, it was a very.
You're lucky that ain't a Lance Bachmann. It wouldn't have made the top 10, but that's besides the point. We're not going
It's
there.
and again, a lot of life is qualitative, quantitative analysis, and but it's a serious pandemic. So to me, when this started, especially at the time when we didn't really know much about it, we didn't know, was it going to kill 20% of the people who got it? Was it going to kill kids? Was it going to, how fast would it spread? And those were some scary days, for my wife in particular on the front lines. She went into work every day, just like so many nurses and doctors in this country. But it was scary, and it, as we learned more about it, it became very clear that the primary deaths were occurring in the long-term care facilities. As of right now, in Pennsylvania, almost 50% of all Pennsylvanians who died were associated with a long-term care facility. Now, again, I just want to stress this because I have friends who work in those facilities. I respect many of them. This is in no way being an indictment of those facilities or the staff or what they did to combat COVID, the precautions they took. It just is what it is. Of all of the data that we can talk about, that 50%, I think it's 49.8% number, to me is the most significant. So when I realized that, when we started early on seeing that
Well,
trend,
you compile the data. You have access to all this data.
we all do. Thanks. Yeah, actually, shout out to the Pennsylvania Department of Health. They're data people. I've been following it since the inception of this. Started off with just a simple little a chart. Now has an interactive dashboard. Any person can sign up. Literally last night I was playing. You can literally make your own little charts.
Let me see your chart there, my friend. I'm a data guy. I like it. So let's just see.
I forget the exact source, but there's a link on the Department of Health website where you just give them your email and you can log in. You can play around with the data, almost like playing around with the big pivot chart with preset data.
So new cases, average 7 days. It looked like, this is a real shocker. October, November, December. January now, it's dropping.
Yep.
Just dropping like no tomorrow. Man, is that amazing? That looks like that follows the election a little bit. I don't know. I mean,
no comment on that.
I don't know, but
and I can also say that the IHME, I think it's the Institute for Metrics and Health Statistics, they were pretty accurate with their prediction of the spikes that we've seen so far. So, but yeah, no, any Pennsylvanian, I encourage if anybody's curious, just go on, just Google PA Department of Health, click on COVID-19 and click on data, and you can create your own little charts, just like I did.
So it looks like, according to your chart, the majority of people that have died here have been 70 plus. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So
almost 50% of them in home health care.
So yeah, it's correlated to obviously the majority of people in a long-term care facility are going to be senior citizens.
I don't see a lot of kids or a lot of people under 50 on there.
So no, and
have a lot of children in Pennsylvania died?
No. We are very lucky. Unlike our somewhat recent ancestors in the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu, actually, the more healthy you were, the more chance you had at a bad outcome, including death. There was something,
Jesus.
Yeah. So, and that's why so many young 20-somethings, coming back from the war, real healthy, died from it. Whereas if you were older, you had a much less chance. So with this pandemic, it's inverted. The data is very clear on that. And I just want to say too, having a 4-year-old daughter, thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
Can we just, you have kids, can we just all just take a moment and just thank God, the universe that it is not killing the kids in the way that the Spanish flu did. I could not imagine what the country would look like right now if that chart was inverted, and it was, and
it'd be a lot different.
Yes, and I would be, I think all of us as parents would have some very nervous nights. So
for the viewers, what's your top 3 takeaways from the data you see?
So number one, the long-term care facility death. The fact 50%. Oh, and I should also say that long-term care facilities account for only 8% of total infections.
So wait a minute. They only make up 8% of total infections in the state of PA.
Yeah.
And 50% of deaths.
Correct. To me, that's those are the 2 most important numbers.
Okay, so, and I'm not being rude here. I don't have any dog in this fight.
Yeah,
but
of course.
I'm a data guy. I got employees here. You see the size of my company.
Of course. Yeah.
If I saw 50% of my churn from 8% of my staff, I'd be addressing that first and foremost before everything else.
Right.
Would that be accurate?
So.
Or am I just totally missing something here?
So can you reframe the question? Are you
if I got 50% of my deaths from 8% of the infections,
right?
I'd be addressing that 50%, that 8%. What are we doing here to treat, to neutralize this? What are we doing? How are we addressing this before I move on to what's number 2?
Yes, and I think
I don't know if they are or not.
No. I think you're correct, and I think it's a little. Again, it's a little Monday morning quarterbacking, but I think most governors would admit publicly and probably privately that they did not handle the nursing home, long-term care facility aspect of the pandemic in a way that, looking at those two data points, which are just so shocking.
Do you have a 90 days? Because we have the vaccination now. Is it the same statistics for the last 90 days?
Are you asking, has the vaccination affected?
No, so we got vaccines out now. I'm
Yeah.
asking you, is it still about for January? We're going into February, but November, December up to January. Is it still nursing homes only make up 8%?
Correct. Yes, sorry.
And are you still making up 50% of the deaths?
Yeah, correct. That data point has stayed very steady.
Okay, so that's a problem.
Sure.
In my opinion, to me, I'm not the brightest guy. Shit shut down all over. Everything's locked down.
Mm-hmm.
Wear masks, which I have no problem with, and all these other things.
Of course.
Restaurants can't eat indoors, but we're going to have a Super Bowl with 25,000 people in the next 2 weeks here. I mean, but 50% of the deaths still happening in nursing homes in PA?
Correct.
We're almost a year into this.
Right. I was to be honest with you, and it's one of the reasons I actually went to the last night. I was up a bit late because I really wanted to just make sure that I was not misinterpreting the data. That data point has remained pretty consistent. It's, and again, I really cannot stress enough that this is in no way an indictment of these facilities. We need these facilities because, first of all, not everyone can be at home. There's plenty of people, we have patients where they do get to a point where they do need to go to a facility. Okay. And maybe, a lot of times, especially if they're, waiver eligible, they don't have, anywhere else to go, but the government county run facility. So this is in no way an indictment, please.
I'm not saying it's an indictment, but it's just the facts are the facts. I tell people the facts are the facts.
49.55%.
Like if you come home and your roof is blown off, it doesn't matter how your roof got blown off. You got to fix the roof.
Right.
I don't want to hear about the roofing company. I don't want to hear all the houses. What am I going to do to fix the problem?
Right.
9 months later, they're coming up with every solution out there to fix the problem, supposedly with everyday American businesses, but still that stat's the same. They've not moved the needle one iota.
Yeah, it's a little bit shocking. I think that it really speaks to the intensity of which COVID attacks, an older person or a person with a pre-existing condition or both. I think that is probably the really only answer because I know these long-term care facilities have obviously stepped up their countermeasures.
But clearly it's not working. If it starts at 50% with no countermeasures, right? I'm just going to equate it to simple business. Mm-hmm. If my churn starts at 50% and I still putting countermeasures in over the last 9 months, 10 months, which has been now 10 months, and my churn is still at 50%, clearly my countermeasures aren't working.
Right, but don't forget, we're looking at these percentages in terms of total Pennsylvania residents of deaths and population. So remember earlier you and I were chatting prior to going live. You always have to look at the data in relative terms. So obviously, as more non-nursing facility Pennsylvanians became infected, it does change the way that you should at least a little bit interpret the data. So to me, again, I looked
at your chart. The spike has been October, November, December, going back down in January.
Correct.
Right? And the spike's been. So if the spike is equal across the board, meaning nursing homes, everything, and if they're still making up 8% of the total spike, but 50% of the deaths, doesn't seem like they got better at treating it themselves.
So I think, again, I just want to stress I am not in any way a medical professional.
I'm not saying you are. I'm not here to blast these people in the homes.
Sure, of course.
I'm actually saying to the governors and the counties, you're going around making these decisions for all these other people outside of this facility saying, we got to move the needle here, we got to move the needle here. You just pulled data inside I'm assuming that data probably took you 4 to 5 hours to pull, make it accurate, and look at it, correct? Maybe a little bit longer?
Oh, no, this was only about an hour, actually.
Okay. So in an hour pulling your data, you could clearly see we probably haven't moved the needle too much. It's saving lives at a percentage of people in nursing homes, in these homes, they get it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine that, quarantine protocols within the nursing facilities have saved lives. I mean, we have to imagine that because it is a disease that's infected. But looking at the rate, to me, again, the logical explanation is that COVID-19 is just brutal if you're older, have a pre-existing condition, and if you have both. That to me is what the data suggests.
I heard someone else say the same exact thing, and I'm not making light of it because I know people that died with COVID,
As have I.
not from COVID, but with COVID.
Yep.
Fragile people. I buried my brother this summer. Fragile people die. No, it's okay. But and I was like, damn, I never heard that before. And we were talking about ammonia, right? How like if an older person catches ammonia, it's a very rough route for them to beat ammonia. If they have pre-existing other line, if they're fragile. And you think about that, I'm like, well, COVID's the same thing, and you guys are seeing it every day on the front lines. And I don't know how you're dealing with it, but I know it can't be good. But I'm assuming people are better off staying in their home being treated than they are going to these facilities.
Correct. And that is full circle back.
That's what the data says to me real fast.
Correct. And again, I would say this regardless of, what I did, for a living. The simple fact is, yes, you're safer at home, given these pretty staggering numbers still at the long-term care facilities. So back to full circle, this is our war because it's even more important now that we do our job to keep these people at home because it could be a life and death matter.
100%.
I mean, it's anecdotal, but anecdotal evidence can be useful sometimes. Many stories within my industry, of my circle of colleagues of, Mrs. Jones was getting home health care. Daughter said, oh, no, I just think she needs to go to a facility and needs a little bit more oversight. Goes to the facility, dies of COVID 3 weeks later. There's so many stories of that. So that's why this year, this is our moment. This is the most important time for our industry to be successful and keep these people at home.
What's the second and third giveaway? You gave me 2 data points.
Sure.
What's the third data point you take from all that data?
So we talked a little bit. So the first really is the long-term care facility death rate in relation to the death rate throughout the state. The second is the age grouping, and I think the distribution has not changed too much. Looking at it early on, as I did, and now again, we can just be very lucky that that is not inverted. But the third data point I pulled up, and I have a nice little heat map here because who doesn't like a good heat map?
I love heat maps.
And again, this is in relation into how human beings process big data, because we were talking a little bit before. A human, especially if you're not a data scientist or mathematician, you're thrown a number, 4 million. Okay, well your brain just goes, that's a big number. But what's it relative to? Do you know what I mean? So I did some heat mapping last night. Again, the Department of Health has this was all done internally within their lovely little dashboard they created. So the largest, again, per capita. So we're not, because of course Philadelphia has the most cases, the most deaths, but per capita, Philadelphia is not. It's in the middle.
It's in the middle. But it's all closed down still.
I just actually on the way up, I was because I haven't looked at the recent restrictions, but so you might know a little bit more than
I think restaurants are at 25% indoor dining at this point, which you might as well just be out of business.
Yeah, I just have to say, my dad was a small business owner, and my brother owns a small business. I feel for anyone within an industry that specifically like restaurants, like the travel and hospitality industries. I just can't imagine what a tough year this has been for them. And my wife and I, as stressful as this year has been, and as many 12-hour days as I put in, at the end of the day, I have a job still.
Yeah, that's it. So what's the top one?
So number one is actually it seems like it's it's the center of the state. Seems to be a bit of the troublemakers there. Franklin County, Center County.
Okay.
So some of those counties in the center. Now again, it's per capita, so these are smaller counties. Again, this is in no way.
Can I see the chart?
Sure.
So I mean, it's not. You gotta remember. This is what I say to people. I see you're tough. See, I love data for one reason.
Mm-hmm.
People lie about numbers. Numbers don't lie.
Correct.
So people get so offended when you say, "Hey, you came in last place in the race." What do you mean I came in? You came in last place. 5 of you raced.
Mm-hmm.
You came in 5th. There's no denying that. I mean, here, yeah, I mean, it's not good. I mean, Philadelphia's really almost to the bottom of your chart here. There's yellow as Philadelphia.
About in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the legends in the right corner, bottom right corner. But
Yeah.
and that's why it's so important when you're looking at data.
And this is death data, not even contagious data.
That I believe that heat map is death. Yeah,
Death.
is death rate. Yeah.
So that's even a more compelling story.
Yeah, and I tend to do that just because my main thing with focusing on that, and most epidemiologists do as well, is because we don't really know how many cases there are, because of the fact that I think it's up to 50% of people are asymptomatic. So we really don't. I mean, there's speculation. Epidemiologists can make projections, but we don't really know how many Americans have had COVID-19 at this point. It's very difficult. So, but yeah, no, I think. As far as just to kind of put a pin in the whole data discussion and how it's related to COVID-19, I think that all Americans, when they see a headline that's scary and has a big number, should just take a look at it. Just as we say, drill down into the data a little bit. And you don't have to be a data scientist to do it. You just have to think about it a little bit logically. And again, this is not in any way downplaying the pandemic. I'm just saying that sometimes these headlines are very scary, and they throw a number at you, but that number is relative to something else.
What people, and you say the headlines, and so I'm going to just make this clear to everybody. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all these people, their revenue is generated by one source. Advertisers. That's it. And they don't understand that. So their job is to catch you with eye-catching, fear-mongering information to make you be glued to the channel and talk about the same thing, because they act like they're doing you a favor, but their advertisers go away, Marcus, they're out of business. And they sell advertising based on viewership.
Sure.
And that's why no one believes the media, whether you're a right or left-wing person anymore, because I sat there and someone said to me the other day, CNN took the death ticker off their news at night.
Right.
And I went and put it on, and the death ticker wasn't there. Now that death ticker's been there for the last 6 months straight.
Right.
What's changed in the last 2 or 3 weeks with this pandemic to make them take the death ticker down?
Yeah, obviously we had an election, and
I mean, I don't know if it's the election or not. I'm just saying, but what's changed that would make them say, okay?
So I can tell you that. And again, I'm no expert in media. I actually don't watch any of those channels. I try to get most.
I don't watch news at all anymore.
Yeah,
that reason.
I do my best to get my information from, I guess, a little more scholarly types of places. And I do agree with you.
So you think media is bullshit too?
Listen,
across all boards.
Tragedy sells, right? In the news world. I mean, I don't think anyone could, if Anderson Cooper were here right now, what would be his argument? He couldn't really argue us.
He would tell you he's a truthful journalist bringing you good news, and he wants to do right by the American people.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, tragedy, war, adversity, struggle sells.
Even Tucker Carlson, who's the number one show right now, if you watch him, his is all almost inflaming people.
Yeah, sure.
He's almost trying to inflame people, which I get. He's doing the opposite.
Yeah, and it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that there has been some pushback by journalists throughout the country who believe pretty much what you're saying is that the news media, the mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, CNN, has not done a good job framing the pandemic.
No.
They have, and again, I just want to reiterate, this is indeed a 1 out of 100 year health crisis. Mm-hmm. It has killed 400,000 Americans. Okay, and listen, yes, many of them were according to the data toward the ends of their life, But my dad's 83. I don't want my dad to die.
Of course
I
not.
love my dad. We Americans love our mums and pop-ups, right?
No doubt.
And
Do you think we're coming out of this? Do you think we're coming out
do.
of it? You do?
well, yeah. I mean, so we can get into the vaccine a little bit, but
Jump into the vaccine.
yeah,
People
sure.
want to know about the vaccine. I know you know about the vaccine.
yeah. I've got
Would
gotten
you-
my first
Shot?
shot.
Your wife got her first shot, correct?
She did. She did.
Yeah.
She got hers. Penn did a pretty good job early on, and there was a little a little fine tuning that the Department of Health had to do within our industry, the Office of Long-Term Living. So the Deputy Secretary and the Secretary, went back and forth, and I'm happy to say that we were included in the 1A grouping. So home health care. Workers are there. Although I 100%, feel like those true frontline, in the hospital nurses like my wife, should have been very much first in line, and they were. But
Are you nervous about the vaccine at all?
not at all.
Not at all.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I look at it.
Tell the viewers why, because a lot of people.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's 37% of all healthcare workers
Yeah,
are not taking it. I know it's high up there, right?
So
35, 37%.
I just today, I didn't print it out, but I should have. But so right now, it's interesting because it's actually you might find this is going to be such an interesting correlation. So in long-term care facilities, it's about 57% are getting it.
Okay.
In like University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Penn Medicine, about 8%.
Okay, so the bigger universities more get.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that where the most death has occurred is the workers seem more hesitant to get the vaccine. Now, again, there's been some studies that may perhaps have to do with some education levels and things like that. But, the bottom line is everyone.
Maybe they don't trust as much. They see more death. They see. I don't have the answers. I know. I know overall.
It's a
I saw
tough
it's like 30-some% aren't getting it.
Correct.
And
that's correct. Yeah.
To me, that was mind-boggling. Like that's a lot of healthcare workers saying, "I don't want the vaccine."
Sure. Yeah.
I just thought that was an interesting stat.
No.
I don't agree or disagree. I just.
Sure.
I don't know if I'll get it, to be honest with you. I'll figure that out when the time comes.
Sure. Yeah.
My wife will let me know. If you want to be honest, my wife will let me know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we live in a free country. Every American has the right to refuse the vaccine, of course. We at CareGivers America, I believe, like every single healthcare facility, healthcare agency, we're not making it mandatory. There's no repercussions.
Yeah.
We are encouraging it. We just today put up a nice banner on our website.
But do you think it's interesting that almost 35% aren't taking it?
Yeah, I mean, again,
So I figure anyone in the healthcare profession would be like, I'm in. If you're like, yes, it's almost as simple to me. Police officers carry guns.
Yeah, no, and that's why the long-term care workers getting it even less of a rate than like a nurse at Penn Medicine is so strange to me. So I think, we're in agreement that you'd think that they would be like, oh my God, just give it to me right now. Do you know what I mean?
I've seen death. I see what this does.
Yeah, I've seen the worst of the pandemic as a long-term care facility administrator, direct care, whatever. I'm afraid I don't have the answer. I don't know if anyone really does. I mean, I guess psychology has some to do with it, but but for me, I look at it like when there's a little bit of a double standard, in my opinion. Now, again, this is sort of not CareGivers America Director of Business Development, Marcus. This is just sort of my opinion on life and humans and science and how we interact with it. That people would be so quick to just get on an airplane, not think twice about all of the years of science and aviation study and technology that went into getting you from Philly to Los Angeles safely. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then, when it comes to something like a vaccine, all of a sudden, it's junk science, a bunch of hack doctors came up with it. So to me, that's a cognitive dissonance situation.
Listen, I'm still petrified to fly, and I fly all the time. But yes, I get what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I still do.
This is technology. This is, I mean, we we are a little bit nitpicky, and I guess because it has to do with, well, no, but our health, our safety in the air is important. But, when it comes to maybe our own bodies, we tend to be a little bit.
Do you believe part of this is just political now and just going to keep kicking the political football around?
I think it's political, and I also think it's psychological. There's an excellent new book out called Apollo's Arrow by, I'd say, our country's leading epidemiologist, at least our rock star epidemiologist, because he's on like Joe Rogan and stuff. Yeah. Nicholas Kristof. I think I might be saying his last name wrong, but he wrote a book about literally this pandemic. It came out a few months ago. I've gotten through most of it, and in it he predicts, how does this shake out? Okay, we got the vaccine now. Looking at the way that other similar types of viruses have ebbed and flowed, even before we had vaccinations. So he predicts 2021 will be the year of getting vaccinated, getting to herd immunity. We're still wearing masks. Things are still kind of, not open. We're the Super Bowl thing is interesting though, but I actually didn't even think about that until you told me that this morning. But
dumbest thing I heard.
And then he predicts, and again, I'm just saying, this is this gentleman's prediction. Smart guy. Check him out. I think he was on Joe Rogan twice during the pandemic. He then he thinks 2022 is going to be start basically some roaring 20s again. People are going to, will have reached herd immunity. The numbers will probably be very low. Hopefully the economy will start to, bounce back. And he predicts, another sort of boom of like that we saw in the Roaring '20s, including new art, more people going out to dinner, more people going out to concerts because we've been deprived of it for so long. I mean, think about it. What we're living through right now, regardless of where you stand on, have the lockdowns been too strict? Have they been not strict enough? Regardless, these are extraordinary times that we're
100%.
living through. I mean, just being on lockdown. I mean, I haven't hugged my mom in a year. I mean, right? Like that. That's a big deal. I mean, this is a sea change moment for humans, and so yeah, he predicts some good times are coming in 2022. But he does believe,
for everybody watching.
Yeah, and all of this business owners, and not just business owners, anyone who's been financially impacted, who've lost their job, who've had a pay cut by the pandemic, it's awful, and it's a tough thing because we had to obviously do something. There is some epidemiologists, they're usually not reputable, who just, oh no, just let it spread. And I believe it was it Norway? One of the Scandinavian countries did that. They just said, just let it do what it's going to do. And they didn't really do too much. Now, again, it's apples and oranges because Scandinavians tend to be a little more compliant, a little bit more, healthier than Americans. So there's, again, that's a data point that is relative. But regardless, we acted as basically a world. I mean, it's not like just America went on lockdown. And it varies by country. My best friend lives in Jordan. They've been a little less strict than we are here. Another friend lives in Britain, and they've had their ups. They're sort of in the middle. Like they've like they'll get real loose and then they get real strict again, and so it's varied. And then in Canada, a friend who said they have been very strict up there with the lockdown. So but we can honestly say that we as humans, as a world, decided we were, other than I guess one country, that we were going to put in intervention. We were going to try to curtail it as best we could. Now, here's a story that I do like to tell, and I think that this is one that you probably would really find not only horrific, but also, to your point, of the effect of the lockdowns, having on those businesses and people's livelihoods, is when India hit their first spike. Okay, India is obviously a developing world country. there's a lot of poverty there, of course.
Yep.
They shut down a whole bunch, their factories. They went into lockdown, just kind of like we did, just thinking, well, America, just lock the country down like the other countries are doing. We can do it. Some of these people who were working in these factories all of a sudden found themselves with no paycheck and no way to get back to their local village. Many thousands walked from the various factories trying to get home, and many thousands starved to death on the way. So to say that an intervention, to say that a lockdown has no negative consequences, of course is not correct. And I think any politician, left or right, would agree with that. This was a trade-off scenario.
That's it. My only argument with that is a trade-off. This is what I said.
Does that make sense?
It does what you're saying, and now I want to jump into some other things.
Sure.
But I'll leave it at this. When I hear we're all in this together,
Yeah.
then let's be in together. No one get a paycheck. Shut it down. Why are you collecting a paycheck, right? A
Sure.
politician.
Yeah.
These health advisors saying shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you such an elitist? You still get a paycheck.
Sure. There's
If we're in it together, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, no, there's another
I'm willing to do it. If everyone in America doesn't get paid, and we all go to government food for the next 60 days, let's do it. I'm in.
Sure, sort of like the draft with the World War.
I'm in.
Yeah.
But why do the elitists get to say we're in this together, but they collect their pay? Their life doesn't change.
So
they're going out to dinners, restaurants, doing a lot of leaders during this last year have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar to say.
They have indeed. Hypocrisy is bad no matter what. If small scale in your family or if you're the governor of a big state, and you lead by example.
And it gets people infuriated.
And it's a bad look. It's unfair. It's hypocrisy in its truest form.
So I agree with you. It does have. So I'm not making I'm telling you just straight up now, man to man.
Right.
Like it'd be great for if you're telling your children, your sons, never to cheat on their wives, and you're out cheating on your wife every night.
Right.
I mean, you kind of look stupid.
Yeah, it's actually, in my opinion, one of the being a hypocrite is one of the worst things you can be. In my opinion.
Yeah.
That absolutely.
So now let's jump into cool stuff that you've done.
All right.
So you've grown this organization. You're a key part of it. You handle their marketing. You were the decision to go to digital. They weren't on board with it. It was your sole decision. You came here and you said, I actually have to go back and sell everyone on
I did
digital.
A little bit, yeah.
I was like, oh my God,
didn't
this
take
poor
too much.
guy.
No,
but I'm just saying. I was like, this poor guy.
Yeah.
Everybody has a cell phone in their hand these days, and you got to
Yeah.
worry about selling a company now is digital right avenue for us.
Right.
If I'm correct, digital made up about 5% of your total spend every month.
Small.
Now you're about 40% now in
I'd
less
say-
than 18 months.
Yep.
I mean, that's a big jump.
Sure.
Clearly, you're feeling the impact that digital's had on your company.
Yeah. No, it's obviously just from lead generation to just having a presence in the digital world where everyone is more and more on their phones and on their computers, but also I just really want to just a huge component to the success of the home care industry is recruitment, because listen, it's America. We can't force you to be a home health aide. Like you have to want to be one, just like you wanted to be own a marketing company, and there is what's called the caregiver crisis right now. And that's a whole nother podcast.
So you guys are fighting for recruitment.
So we're fighting for recruitment.
But can I jump into something here? So
Sure.
let's just go through this real fast because me and you talked.
Yeah.
You said, besides your in-house referral team, pretty much a network, digital is now your number one source of
Correct.
leads for new
Correct.
business.
Absolutely.
But you recruit your new employees about 90% through digital.
Maybe even higher. We just me and the director of recruitment actually just developed a new tracker and dashboard and everything to look at the analytics, and it could be even closer to 95%.
Literally just
All
coming
digital.
through all digital.
100%
You recruit.
digital.
Think about that.
No.
What happens if you didn't make that change 18 months ago? Because that is a real crisis for recruiting. In your industry, you need employees. People don't understand that. You could have the best job come across the board. If you can't send out a caregiver
So it's a lose-lose for everybody. Think about it. If we can't staff a case, and say even our competitor can't, the taxpayer loses because they go to a nursing facility, which is more money on the taxpayer. The person loses because they don't want to go there; they want to stay at home. The family loses, and the agency loses because you don't get the case, where you then generate some revenue. So it's really, in some ways, it's as important, as obviously getting a new lead and getting a new patient. So there's, a lot of neat things that we do. There's definitely an economy of scale aspect to this, being that we're so big and we can offer benefits and higher pay rates than, say, a smaller company. Because of that economy of scale, it does give us an advantage. And again, listen, I have many friends who run small home cares and do a great job, but much in capitalism has an economy of scale aspect to it.
100%.
That's why Walmart's successful and Amazon, and
no doubt.
So again, it's not it just is what it is. So the digital aspect to our recruitment, and don't forget too, is so important because I don't have the exact data right now, but the vast majority of our caregivers are young people, 20s and 30s, and these are people who, I'm 40, who are way more connected to the digital world than I was, where I still remember being in college and not having a cell phone. I didn't have I remember my first cell phone. I was 24. So these are people that are very, very obviously tech savvy, digital savvy, and are used to communicating in that way. So for instance, some of the stuff we're doing with you guys with Facebook is so important because a lot of times an applicant maybe doesn't want to answer their phone, but they'll chat me on Facebook.
Of course.
They'll see the Facebook ad and interact with it. So it's so important. And we obviously want to, attract the best quality caregivers. So that comes into having the largest applicant pool possible so that we can pick the best.
But let's talk about you being a leader during these times. What's the biggest challenge that you faced being a leader?
So I think, with my staff was keeping them focused on the task at hand and, fighting the war and doing our job, while balancing, their own fears and their own anxieties and their own relationship. Because again, not to go back to COVID and the vaccinations and everything, but we all sort of made our peace with this in our own ways as individuals, right? We've all in our own little minds have made have at this point now, a year into it, have an understanding of what COVID is to you and the lockdowns and everything. And so to me, it's been balancing, reminding them that we are, in healthcare. And not only are we in healthcare, and by the way, I should say too, another big component of what we do is keeping people out of the hospital. So remember at the time when we were worried that our hospitals were going to be overwhelmed? Yeah. What a more important time to keep Miss Jones from that, accidental diabetic shock and having to go to the ER or falling down the 100%. Stairs. So that's a whole nother component. So it was keeping them balanced, and just, a big part of the team, because why they're so successful and why they are still the number one driver of new referrals for us. Is because these are people. These are people who are just naturally gifted with communication, with making people feel comfortable, with communication, with new things. So the hardest thing, from a logistical standpoint, is we don't get to engage our community in the same way we used to. You weren't there, but I know you sent several of your senior leaders to our gala, 2019. We didn't do it last year. So not being able to do those things, and my deputy director, Anastasia, who is sort of the spearhead of our community events, this has been really hard for her because she lives for this. She lives for that, community, partnership with the local nonprofit community center, get the seniors in, have a DJ, maybe a salsa band, get some great food, and show them a good time. And we haven't been able to do that. And it's been brutal.
Absolutely. I guess, what has been your biggest failure in a leadership role, and what has it taught you? When you say, no, I just failed at this, and know what, I'm glad I did fail because it taught me something.
So, honestly, and I'm a true believer in calling yourself out and not sure when you're in like it's probably been a while for you since you've been in an interview, but they ask what's your biggest weakness and you're like, I work too hard. No, I believe you should that's really important to grow as a human being, to be honest with you. During the rebrands, I made several missteps regarding not the marketing aspect of it, but some of the nuts and bolts aspect of it. Probably would have been nice to have had you guys helping a little bit. So in hindsight, it's 2020. So for instance, just changing over like how the Google My Business interrelated with the former Sarah Care into the greater caregivers, how people were a little bit confused with, well, wait, headquarters is now in Scranton, but Jenkintown is so big, and so I made some serious missteps with process flow regarding the rebrands. It definitely lost us some cases, and we did our best. I had my team really go into full crisis mode, because we had some people who were confused, and we just didn't maybe get the word out to some of our direct care workers, explaining the acquisition. I definitely made some missteps with the rebrands.
Well,
Yeah.
part of that's learning, and you got to learn. Think about learning. You're a data guy. You understand it. Now I got one more question for you.
Sure.
If you're putting, let's just say, $8,000 a month into PPC, what would you normally bring back? Would you say a month, 5 times that, 6 times that?
Yeah, 5 6 times. Easy.
Easy.
Based on the lifetime value of a patient.
And that's pretty nice.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're and again, what's so great about it is it's real time. That's what I love about it, because like I'm sure you guys do. You do a survey. How'd you hear about us? Why'd you pick us? Unfortunately in marketing it can be a little vague sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But with this, it's like 100% this person clicked on a Google ad and found us that way.
Nice.
Like I literally can see it. I can listen to it in CallRail. I can mark it as that. I can run a report. So it takes that vagueness out, whereas in some of the other marketing channels, there is that vagueness. So
On the final roar, and I think this is probably the most important question I'm going to ask to sit from my seat.
yeah.
How has digital marketing changed Marcus and Caregivers of America on how they think about digital marketing?
So I can tell you, it has pushed other departments to become more tech savvy. Okay, so we now offer virtual onboarding of our direct care workers. I'm not going to, of course, Mia, if you're listening to this, I'm not taking credit for that, but I'd like to think, because she's had that idea for years now. But I think what we did with you, and really what we did with you, was becoming as digitally sophisticated as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that's at the heart of, beyond, the Google ads and different things, that at the heart of it is we want to be as digitally sophisticated as any other company out there. Even a huge one like, like Penn Medicine or Centene or Amazon. Maybe not Amazon.
Not Amazon.
That's a whole, but we want, our website to be as sophisticated as it can be. We want our ad targeting to be as sophisticated as can be. We can do that with you guys, with geo-targeting, with demographic targeting. So I'd like to think that it spurred a little bit of an embrace of the overall move toward technology in home health care.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Marcus, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate you coming to the den. It's nice to see people grow, make money. Thanks for giving us insight on the pandemic. I love the data. Marcus isn't saying this. I'm saying this. Home health care facilities, governors, you might want to start looking there and change that 8 to 50% death rate. It will definitely help out a lot of people. It's sad, but that might be the main focus for Q2, Q3 of 2021 of, hey, let's focus there and stop that rate.
We would love for them to invest more in us so we can keep those people at home and have them not be in the long-term care facility. And I also just want to say that really exciting new stuff with our partnership with Motive Care, formerly Logistic Care, coming up. And I'm really excited to jump into that and partner with my new colleagues.
Awesome.
So.
Marcus, thank you so much. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to follow me at Lance Bachmann on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me on Facebook at Lance Bachmann Digital. And every Thursday we drop a new podcast. Don't forget to listen to it. We're giving out great content. And remember this is the time to build your business right now. Let's effing go, everybody.